Bombing of a school in the Syrian city of Idlib was an outrage and possible war crime, says the UN. At least 26 people, mostly children, were killed in the airstrike. Scores were injured. We're in North Carolina as Hillary Clinton steps up a gear with Michelle Obama by her side for the first time. But why do so many people hate Mrs. Clinton? We're in Arizona to find out.
Hillary wants to do everything that she humanly can to get rid of firearms. When you take away guns from law-abiding citizens, you make it so that people that illegally get guns have free range on the populace.
Plus, if you go down to the zoo today, you're bound to see them at play. But environmental campaigners WWF say these children watching tigers may find none to view in the wild by the time they're adults. There's been some good economic news for the government today as growth figures revealed the UK economy expanded by 0.5% in the 3 months following the Brexit referendum. That was stronger than analysts had been predicting. Then the Japanese car maker Nissan confirmed it will build 2 new car models at its giant plant in Sunderland. Theresa May described the decision as fantastic and insisted there was no special deal. Our North of England correspondent Kieran Jenkins is in Sunderland tonight. Kieran.
Well, in other times, this would just be very good news for Sunderland, for the UK car manufacturing industry. 7,000 jobs rely on this place being in good health. But now, of course, everything is framed by Brexit, and it wasn't so long ago that Nissan were making some rather gloomy noises about Brexit. They wanted guarantees from the government. They wanted compensation in case the cost of exporting should increase. Now, the government have been forced to say that there was no special deal, no compensation package for Nissan, that this is a vote of confidence in Britain from Nissan. The question is, though, what was said to Nissan? What reassurances were given? And can those magic words realistically be uttered to every other business and every other industry, which also will claim that it faces now a very uncertain future? This was a company hinting rather unsubtly at troubled times ahead. Now they say they're growing, a boost for this workforce, for Nissan itself, for the government. But the suspicion that a deal was struck raises difficult questions for Brexit Britain.
We've been talking with Nissan and others about how we will ensure that we get the best possible deal for our arrangements for dealing with trading with the European Union once we've come out of the European Union, but also maintaining the competitiveness of the British economy into the future.
It was only August that Nissan's chief executive said investment decisions might have to be put on hold unless a deal was agreed with government. There would have to be compensation in case tariffs made exporting to Europe post-Brexit more expensive. So when Nissan's boss met privately with the Prime Minister earlier this month, what exactly did she promise? Theresa May. This Nissan exec said, contrary to reports, the government had not given them a written guarantee for extra support. But did Nissan get a precious insight into the Prime Minister's negotiating position?
We've discussed through with the government where they think we could end up, which obviously I can't tell you what I understand of the government's negotiation strategy. But
why not?
But we are sure that the government is working really, really hard, really diligently.
Sounds like you know something about the way the direction the government's heading, and you won't tell everyone else, and that sounds like special treatment.
I know that the government has the same understanding as the automotive industry of all of the problems that we are facing and the countermeasures that we had to put in place to close those out.
This matters because Nissan aren't the only ones who'd like the inside track. That's what Nicola Sturgeon said she was denied 3 days ago on her own visit to Downing Street. Opponents say it raises the prospect of Brexit being done on the hoof.
Today we've heard of a deal with Nissan, which I welcome, but does this mean the government is going to do deal by deal, company by company or area by area? We just don't know. We can't go on like this. There needs to be a coherence to our negotiations.
The government knows it can't really do without Nissan. Almost a third of all cars made in the UK are produced here. They'll now make 2 new models here. Good news for the 7,000 strong workforce, but other car manufacturers, other industries are already asking, what about us?
I really don't think it's for the government to be trying to favour one company or another company or one industry over another industry. That really is just a licence for vested interest to be petitioning Downing Street and threatening to leave and so on in order to get favours from the government.
Even the suggestion of special treatment was something of a sore subject at Nissan earlier. Do you think Nissan deserves special treatment?
You don't have to answer that question.
No.
That's a hard question.
So we asked this. Were you worried that post-Brexit Britain might not be good news for your job?
I think ultimately, no. But at the back of your mind, there was always the possibility that something bad could happen for the company. But overall, with this decision, the morale of the 7,000 direct staff and the 20,000 indirect staff is phenomenal.
The government, of course, has promised a Brexit deal that works for everyone. And even with so much still unclear, Nissan have been convinced it's a deal that at least works for them. Kieran Jenkins, Channel 4 News, Sunderland.
Well, today's provisional economic data was the first real test of the post-Brexit British economy. The 0.5% rise in the period between July and September was, in the main, thanks to a good performance in the services sector. But other areas, such as manufacturing, construction and agriculture, all shrunk. The government said the figures showed the economy's resilience, but critics believe there are turbulent times ahead. Here's our business correspondent, Helia Ebrahimi.
Car by car, Britain's economy on the move. Here at Southampton, the country's biggest export dock, £36 billion out of 40 goes not to Europe, but to the rest of the world. Today's growth figures showing some mettle in defiance of Project Fear. The basic truth, the government got it wrong. It's hard to find clear evidence of a Brexit drag in today's data. Take a look at the OBR's March budget forecast based on Britain staying in the EU. It thought that we'd grow by 0.5% in the third quarter, while the Treasury warned that if we voted for Brexit, the UK would head into recession. Instead, we've stayed the course. In fact, when you take into account the OBR's second quarter prediction as well, then the reality is Britain has outperformed expectations.
Is there a risk that you find that you have to reflect on the OBR's much more gloomy outlook on Britain's economy, and you have colleagues, the likes of David Davis, standing up and saying, well, they've got it wrong in the past. There's no underlying proof that Brexit has done anything bad to the UK economy.
Well, the data we've seen today is backward looking. It tells us what has happened in the third quarter. The reality is that we're moving into a period when we're likely to have more uncertainty than usual about economic forecasts. So the only sensible thing for me to do is to be prepared for a wide range of outcomes and make sure that we can respond appropriately to whatever path the economy takes over the next 12, 18 months.
So despite the figures, we should still be worried?
We should look at these figures and we should see an economy that is resilient and strong, going into a period which is likely to have greater uncertainty.
Crisis averted? Well, at least for now. But the truth is that these figures pose a bit of a dilemma for Treasury. At next month's autumn statement, you're likely to see a very bleak message about Britain's future. So what to do? On the one hand, Treasury wants the firepower to support Britain's economy. But on the other, today's figures suggest that might not be necessary.
Perhaps that's why the Chancellor is being so coy about today's great news.
We're out of the woods, aren't we?
It's a very good third quarter GDP number, which shows that the economy was not only strong going into the referendum in June, but has been resilient since the referendum, and that's very good news.
But that surely means we don't need any fiscal stimulus.
Well, we're going into a period when there will be much more uncertainty about the economy. Businesses, markets are waiting to see what the outcome of our negotiations with the European Union will be. And I believe we need to be able to support the economy during that period.
Does that mean you're dusting off the Treasury's copy of Keynes's general theory?
You will see in the autumn statement how I propose to approach the challenges that we face ahead. But we do go into this period far more resilient and with a far stronger economy than many people expected.
Your hands are tied in a way. These aren't the numbers you wanted. They're too good almost.
Well, the numbers we've seen today are very good, showing a very strong resilience in
but
the
it
economy.
stops you from doing any kind of bold policy changes come autumn statement. What you actually needed were weaker numbers to be able to do something rather than just measly tinkering.
Well, I don't agree with that. We're very pleased to have strong GDP growth numbers, but we have to look to the future as well.
On the horizon, inflation now rising faster than expected. Public finances projected to have an £84 billion black hole, and the falling pound suggesting financial markets already have Britain on watch. In choppy waters, the Chancellor needs credibility to show he understands what the journey might take. But he also has to deal with a crew, many of whom believe the winds are fair and the good times are already here.
Well, our political correspondent, Michael Crick, is at Westminster. Westminster, well, my goodness me, we must go straight to Sunderland on this issue. And, well, there's been a nod and a wink or something, surely, Michael.
Well, both Downing Street and the business department have been trying to be very cagey today about what it is exactly they said to Nissan. Downing Street say there will be no compensatory package for Nissan. They also say that there's no special deal. Nissan themselves say that the assurances they've had apply to the whole of the car industry. So both interesting points there. This is what Greg Clark, the business secretary who was in Japan last week, this is what he said today in an interview with ITV.
Car companies in the UK export to the European Union and import some components from them. We want to make sure that that continues to be able to be done without bureaucratic or financial impediments. That's our intention, and that's our negotiating mandate.
Now, interesting there, because clearly Greg Clark has said to Nissan that they are hoping to get a deal with the European Union that leaves the car industry tariff-free, free of tariffs on our car exports, free of tariffs on imports of components, but also to maintain the low levels of bureaucracy. I imagine that would include things like, say, end-user certificates, which could be terribly burdensome on the car industry. But the big question is, are they hoping to maintain this tariff-free world, this bureaucracy-free world, inside the single market or outside, inside the customs union or outside? We still don't know the answers to those questions. The other thing is, of course, if the car industry are going to have these arrangements, what about the rest of manufacturing industry? What about the financial services industry? What even about things like universities who are worried that they're going to be losing research income because of Brexit? Well, MPs here at Westminster, the Labour Party, Liberal Democrats, opposition parties, the select committees are going to be trying to press ministers, I'm sure, over the next few months for more details about what it is exactly that they told Nissan in Japan.
Michael Crick. Now, the UN has condemned the airstrikes on a school in Syria, which killed at least 26 people, mostly children. It's not yet known if they were carried out by Syrian government or Russian warplanes. The raids hit several locations in the northwestern Syrian province of Idlib. In the village of Has, 50 miles to the southwest of Aleppo, Syrian state media claimed several terrorists, as they called them, had been killed. The Russian ambassador to the UN said he hoped Russia was not involved. Our chief correspondent Alex Thompson reports.
Locals caught the fighter bomber as it made its approach over the village. 2 schools hit by multiple airstrikes in Has, a village in Idlib countryside, rebel-held territory, just before noon yesterday. The children were just leaving the building when it happened.
The shame of it. Children, civilians, what did they do? They're too young, and they've been bombed by jets. It's criminal. This is the blood of children.
Within the rubble of the school, what we're able to show at this time of the evening. He simply screams, "Oh God, may God take revenge. We have no one but you." Eyewitnesses, international monitors, human rights organisations, local journalists all say either the Syrian or Russian Air Force did this.
The bombing occurred when children were leaving the school. At least 15 to 20 hits, all with parachutes. 50 children at least were at the school gate. The missile hit the heart of the school.
The use of parachute bombs to cause a maximum blast damage is a consistent tactic of the Russian Air Force across northern Syria. The UN tonight angry as it is impotent. The unusually strong language of its statement today worth quoting in detail.
This is a tragedy. It is an outrage, and if deliberate, it is a war crime. This latest atrocity may be the deadliest attack on a school since the war began more than 5 years ago. When will the world's revulsion at such barbarity be matched by insistence that this must stop?
Unusually frank language too from Russia's UN ambassador.
It's horrible. I hope we were not involved. It's the easiest thing for me to say no, but I'm a responsible person, so I need to see what my Ministry of Defence is going to say.
But we have to stress all sides in this war are committing atrocities. Today, rebels killed at least 3 children, according to several sources, when they fired rockets at a school in government-controlled West Aleppo. And all the while, Russia's naval battle group is steaming nearer to Syrian waters. Deprived of refuelling on Spanish territory, now Malta is under pressure to refuse them as the ships head east. Today, the Russian Foreign Ministry said any suggestion that the battle group would take part in the Syrian war was absurd. If so, why else send a battle group to Syria?
Alex Thompson reporting. Well, earlier I spoke to Geert Capellari. He is the Middle East director of the United Nations Children's Agency based in Jordan. I put it to him, this must be one of the worst and most grotesque humanitarian disasters of the war.
It absolutely is, John. Yesterday we saw another atrocious attack killing at least 22 children whose only mistake was to be in school, whose only mistake it was to be committed, to be learning. Unfortunately, John, this is not a unique event for the children in Syria. Since the beginning of the war in 2011, you should know that over 6,000 schools have been damaged. The result of that is that today more than 1.7 million children in Syria are out of school.
Mr. Capellari, you work for the United Nations in a very important role. But above you, there is a United Nations General Assembly, and there is, of course, the Security Council. This surely is a failure of the United Nations not somehow to force these people together, because you've called this a war crime. It's one of many. Surely the moment has come now for effectively the Security Council to go into permanent session until they resolve this.
If indeed these attacks on the schools are deliberate, this indeed would amount to war crimes. Indeed, it is up to the political authorities, any political authority, including the Syrian government, of course, but also the armed opposition groups, and any political authority, any state that cares for the people of Syria, that cares for the children of Syria, to make the political decisions that are needed to stop these atrocities. How are we going to build a new Syria if we deprive Syria of probably its biggest potential, a potential that lies in the minds of the boys and girls out there?
Well, Mr. Capellari, we don't know exactly who committed this terrible atrocity, but the big point here, surely, is this is not just a question of Syrian rebels or indeed of the Syrian government, both of whom have done dreadful things. It's a business of the big powers, America, the United States, Russia, the United Kingdom. Surely the only place to resolve this now is in the Security Council.
I absolutely agree with you, John. It is the responsibility of all of us, and the children in Syria today can continue counting on the voice of UNICEF. We will, until all of this stops, be the voice of the children, the voice of the boys and girls in Syria.
In effect, you're saying this is the turning point, the end point. These children must be remembered for bringing this war to an end.
This has to be the end point. Too many children have already suffered in Syria. This needs to stop. Anyone with a little bit of moral authority should make that decision now.
Well, from UNICEF, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Capillari. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John.
A 19-year-old has appeared in court after a suspect device was found on a Jubilee Line train on the London Underground. Damon Smith from Southwark in London is accused of unlawfully and maliciously making or having in his possession an explosive substance with intent to endanger life or cause serious injury to property. He didn't enter a plea and was remanded in custody. The Belgian region that was single-handedly blocking a trade deal between the European Union and Canada has now agreed to back it. Belgium's leaders announced Wallonia had agreed to support the trade deal after concessions were offered on safeguarding labour. It means the federal Belgian government can now approve the deal, which was originally meant to be signed today by the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
So to America now, and supporters of Hillary Clinton are sensing victory as the polls suggest their candidate is ahead and she continues to raise more money to pay for the final stages of her campaign. But she remains unpopular among some voters, so that's why Mrs. Clinton is also having to rely on the support of the First Lady, Michelle Obama. Kylie Morris is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where tonight the two women are about to appear on the same stage for the first time in this campaign.
There's a great deal of enthusiasm for these two women, the Democratic candidate for the presidency and the First Lady. It's the first time they've appeared on stage together. There's a lot of love here for Hillary Clinton, but I've got to say it is Michelle Obama who has kind of super boosted this campaign in the last few weeks. She has proven to be a very effective advocate, driving out the Democratic base, particularly the women's vote, to try to get people excited about the idea of putting a woman into the White House. Not only that, but she's been very effective at hitting back against the sexist language and commentary of Donald Trump. Now, we've covered lots of Clinton events in the past year, but I've got to say this is one of the first times where you get a sense of real passion from voters here. Now, is it because the election is finally nearly here, or is it because Donald Trump has done the thing that Hillary Clinton could not do, and that is unify the votes of progressive women, independent women, and finally get some momentum behind her candidacy? Whatever the reason, it is real, it is happening, and the Clinton campaign is counting on it to drive her all the way to the White House.
Busting out of the final days of the election campaign, Michelle Obama's approval ratings are higher than either of the candidates running to become president. She's proven a not-so-secret weapon to engage and persuade young women that Hillary is worth their vote.
She's very relatable, she's very fun and cool, and so I think she's adding a lot of that trust kind of warmth factor that I think a lot of people criticize Hillary for lacking.
The First Lady has also become the first line of defence against the sexist comments of Donald Trump, an assault that for some has provided all the more reason to elect America's first woman president.
Has this election strengthened your feminism?
Definitely. I've definitely had to combat comments from people that I've heard, and I think a lot of the criticisms that Hillary has gotten is still very deeply rooted in sexism. Being a part of the political process is
As part
really
of a special university program, a select number of students have followed the campaign all year, gaining a unique but not necessarily flattering glimpse of their national politics.
I think seeing the ins and outs of this election has kind of made me a little bit disappointed. Our country is so polarized right now. It's almost impossible to have productive conversations and come to consensus.
Pretty much every week I get a text from my friends like, hey, did you hear what Trump said today? And I think as someone who wants to support the Republican Party, it's gotten to the point where it's hard to defend every single thing Donald Trump does.
Here's the drill. Fewer than half of young voters turn out to vote. But this year there's more eligible millennials than baby boomers. Will they do their democratic duty?
It depends what side you're on. So I think for people who are extremely scared of Donald Trump, this has never seemed so important.
All the way for Hillary.
And then there are some who are just really excited about the idea of a woman being a president.
I am so excited that I'm about to burst. Ooh, Hillary, all the way to the White House.
All we've had is either old white men, and then we've had Obama, which is so awesome. And now we need a freaking female in office. And I think this is so important for little girls who want to do big things and they're shut off because we live in a male-dominated society.
I really think she's a lot like Marie Curie, where she's the first to do something as a woman, and she has really created an amazing way for women to do more things.
Hillary Clinton is not there yet, but in the final weeks of this tumultuous campaign, she has found core support among women determined to carry her over the threshold of history.
Kylie Morris. Now, the election has also highlighted contentious issues around border security, nowhere more so than in Arizona. Donald Trump has said he'll build his wall along its border with Mexico to clamp down on illegal immigration, plans that have been ridiculed by Hillary Clinton. But some voters there are worried about her plans to restrict gun ownership. Inigo Gilmore visited Tucson and Phoenix to meet the veterans who are taking matters into their own hands.
Sunday afternoon in the Arizonan desert. Time for a bit of target practice.
There you go.
Alan is an Iraq war veteran. It looks like he's never left the combat zone.
So I carry 5 magazines on this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for my AR.
Alan helped launch Veterans on Patrol. They help homeless war veterans and are supported by armed, self-styled patriot groups.
I'm training for a type of event that I will be wearing this 24/7, you know.
He's preparing for all kinds of disasters, including, he says, the prospect of Hillary Clinton becoming president.
Hillary wants to do everything that she humanly can to get rid of firearms. When you take away guns from law-abiding citizens, you make it so that people that illegally get guns have free range on the populace.
Fears of a government conspiracy to take away guns,
That on your belt.
views once seen as
gonna
fringe, are now at the forefront in the presidential campaign. Alan and his friend Montana run through synchronized military drills. They're ready to defend their communities by whatever means necessary.
If somebody's trying to start a fight or attack me, then this gives them a pretty good reason to rethink their life's choices.
The two men used to work as private security contractors along this border with Mexico, so have seen the problems of drugs and illegal immigration firsthand.
This is Mexico on your right, U.S. on your left. There's no more fence, there's nothing. There's just trees and bush.
The handful of guards operating here are unable to cope with tens of thousands of people crossing illegally from Mexico each year. Many are searching for jobs, but some work for the cartels. Some civilian militias who patrol here have taken matters into their own hands, detaining Mexicans at gunpoint. It's here that Trump wants to build his wall.
I will vote for Trump because of the fact that he is going to do something about this border. He sees the problem.
Believe him.
I see Trump, yes, opening his mouth and saying some things that to some people might constitute as bigotry and constitute as racism. I see it as he wants to shed light on a problem that a lot of people are choosing not to look at.
They're going to look up from their cappuccino inside a coffee shop in the middle of New York City and say, well, I don't see anything. They must not know what they're talking about. It doesn't affect them.
From the border, the trail of undocumented people and drugs leads to Tucson. The brutal Mexican drugs cartels have put down roots across this city. Gang crime and drugs-linked violence leaves residents feeling scared and vulnerable. Alan's organisation, Veterans on Patrol, run this camp for homeless vets.
Harley is actually a seizure dog.
At least 1 in 10 adults in Tucson are former soldiers.
Out there in the streets, you don't get treated right. I got spit on and called every name in the book. Baby killer, because I've been mad.
These men fought for America in Vietnam and Iraq. They feel they've been abandoned by the authorities.
You've got your drug dealers that come across, you've got your illegals that come across.
We may have drugs and rapists and guns here already. We don't need more of it.
The vets told me how they feel intimidated by the illegal immigrants who sleep rough in the park just blocks away. 2 marginalized groups with little help or support, pitted against each other.
It's, it's just a very unsecured area that something needs to be done.
In other parts of America, when they talk about a place like Arizona, they're getting paranoid. Donald Trump's whipping them up into a frenzy.
Well, absolutely. Let them come down here and live by the border and see what, actually happens.
The vets feel they need armed protection at this camp, and the fear that Hillary Clinton will take their guns away is just one reason these men are so against her. They also see her as corrupt and untrustworthy.
Hillary needs to be in prison.
There you go. Maybe executed.
No, prison. I'm not going to go that route.
A real prison, though, not like a...
Yeah, she needs to go to prison. I mean, she is a criminal across the board.
While Hillary Clinton may claim that she, rather than Trump, is a champion of military veterans, among this group of vets, she's deeply despised.
These guys down on the border and
2 hours away in Phoenix, another branch of Veterans on Patrol is about to hit the streets. But first, their leader, Lewis, is doing a live broadcast on Facebook to his followers.
Our teams that come out with us, they do carry weapons, but they're trained and they're responsible.
Lewis explains how they tried to stop crime, including patrolling the red light district.
Our teams will walk down the streets. As soon as the girls and the guys, as soon as they see us coming, you would see the transactions break up and the girl go one way and the guy go another because they thought we were cops.
Today, Veterans on Patrol are being backed up by an armed citizens group called the 3 Percenters. They have thousands of members nationwide. They call themselves a patriot movement, but their critics see them as an anti-government militia. The patrol sets out. First stop, the Golden Arches. It's an odd sight seeing armed civilians in a McDonald's, but in Arizona, openly carrying guns is legal.
We built a freaking camp in Tucson.
And they operate with the approval of the local police. One officer stops for a friendly chat. They've gone out to help the homeless, giving out food and medical help. But not everyone in town welcomes them.
Yeah, I just thought you guys were like Nazis or something. Getting scared a little
Sometimes they think we're Nazis.
Right. What do you guys call yourselves?
It's Veterans on Patrol and then the Arizona 3 Percenters.
The irony of an all-white armed patrol operating with police blessing is not lost on some here.
Yeah, I think if I had like a gun, like on my hip, like openly.
Went on a patrol.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think if I like went in people's neighborhoods, people would call the police, like right away.
He's able to laugh this one off. But America is on edge.
So what have we got here?
This looks like flour.
In this increasingly fraught atmosphere, Alan has many fears. Civil unrest, just one of them.
Some type of third-party attack, let's say, whether that be Muslim extremists, whether that be a collapse of the federal government, whether that be some type of dirty bomb in the United States. You know what I mean? Especially now with the elections, you've got 2 total different parties separating, two totally different entities that one believes in the complete opposite of what I personally believe, and the other one is so extreme to the right that it's pretty scary. Our ideologies are just so different. I feel that it would cause a war.
He's taking no chances. Like tens of thousands here, he's a prepper. People who stockpile food and weapons.
That's an entire Costco thing of hot dogs.
These are my own reloads.
He tells me he and his friends have also hidden 1 million bullets in the desert.
Years. And
So you
wanna
go and
pick it up.
bury this?
Absolutely.
Where do you go and bury it?
That's none of your business.
Alan pulled out some biscuits he's been storing for some time.
Are you allergic to coconut or anything like that? Oils or anything?
Find out.
Cool. That's 10 years old.
It's 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So if Armageddon happens, this is what you turn to. This is what will keep you going.
One thing, yeah.
And so they're preparing for Armageddon, whatever that may be. What's certain is that there will be plenty of anger if Hillary Clinton is elected. Less clear is what, if anything, her enraged opponents might actually do.
Inigo Gilmore reporting from Arizona. Let's cross back now to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where Michelle Obama and Hillary Clinton have just appeared for the very first time on stage. You can't exaggerate that Michelle Obama is election gold after her extraordinary, globally viral video of the karaoke, carpool karaoke that she did, and now the speech that she gave right from the heart, unscripted, about the sexism of Donald Trump. She is now viewed as a towering figure in America and hugely influential. Mrs. Clinton is indeed lucky to have her with her today. There they are on stage. We'll leave them there. And it's now to you, Kristen.
Thanks. Now, the planet's wildlife is in big trouble. The latest assessment of birds, fish, mammals, amphibians and reptiles shows their populations have fallen by 58% since 1970 and are likely to drop further by the end of this decade. Worst affected are animals that live in lakes and rivers. And the cause? Well, according to the report by the Zoological Society of London and WWF, it is human activity, loss of habitat, wildlife trade, pollution and climate change. Our science editor, Tom Clark, has this.
Galapagos giant tortoises live a long time. Some are old enough to have witnessed their species pushed to the very brink of extinction, then gradually recover. A rare example of a conservation success story.
There's a population of Galapagos tortoises on Hispaniola that were down to kind of 15 individuals in the 60s, but recent assessments put them at about 1,000.
But overall, from a planet-wide perspective, the opposite is happening.
Yeah, so what we've done is we've assessed about 14,000 populations of about 3,700 species, and what we find is on average they've declined by about 58%.
Today's Living Planet report, which Robin Freeman co-authored, finds that these tortoises will live to see even greater declines. This is the 11th such report, and each has made gloomier reading than the last. Using 1970 as a baseline, the numbers of vertebrates has steadily fallen. Today's forecast nearly 70% fewer mammals, fish, reptiles and birds by the end of this decade. The zoo is now one of the only places left to see some big cats, either hunted or driven from habitats. Elephants are slaughtered in ever greater numbers for the ivory trinket trade, and the Mekong River dolphin is essentially extinct. And the picture back home isn't much better. The hedgehog, no longer common or garden. Overall, half of UK species are in decline.
How urgent do you think the effort has to be now to stop the decline that we're seeing?
I think this is a wake-up call. We need to do something now. And I think the worst thing we can do is to do nothing. I think if an individual person said to me, what can I do, Joe Bloggs, what can I do? I'd say do something, whether it's join an organisation, whether it's write to their MP, stop eating meat as much, just do something.
Don't forget, the seemingly endless bounty of our high streets is supplied by the planet. Declines in wildlife, say the experts, an indicator of its ability to support this human ecosystem. Because what today's report also finds is that us humans are consuming 1.5 times more than what the planet can sustainably provide each year. So that inevitably means unless we can find a more sustainable way of meeting our needs or reducing the amount we consume, we and a lot of other species on the planet are in very big trouble indeed.
In the 4.5 billion year history of the Earth, for the first time a single species, i.e. mankind, has left an indelible mark on the world, such that leading scientists believe we are now entering a new geological era, the Anthropocene, and we might well be entering a new period of mass extinction for wildlife, such that we haven't seen since the dinosaurs became extinct over 65 million years ago.
All is not lost, however. The report identifies spectacular declines in populations of species, but not extinctions. Recent global commitments on climate change and sustainable development could start turning things around, perhaps even during the lifetime of a tortoise.
Now, last night we brought you the story of Natasha Chin, one of 18 women who have died in English prisons in the last 12 months, amid claims from campaigners there's a crisis in the system. Today, new figures have been released showing levels of violence in prisons have reached a new high. The Ministry of Justice said in the year to June there were almost 24,000 assaults, an increase of 34% on the previous year. Assaults on staff rose by 43% to just under 6,000. There were over 36,000 reported self-harm incidents. That's up by more than a quarter. And in the year to September, deaths in prison custody were up 21% to 324. Now, the Ministry of Justice said the overall rise in assaults has coincided with major changes to the regime, operating arrangement and culture in public sector prisons. But not all regimes are the same. In Norway, 2 prisons are using a pioneering approach to drugs rehabilitation, which is now being closely watched by researchers from the UK to see if it can be introduced here. The scheme is expensive and for some controversial, as our senior Home Affairs correspondent Simon Israel reports.
Tell us how you got here. I was actually on vacation and we were sailing and we started partying, and I woke up 1 week later and I was charged with armed robbery and some other stuff.
Marcus Coulson is one of 4,000 prison inmates in Norway. That's about equivalent to the size of just the female jail population in England and Wales. He's on a drug treatment course inside the country's model prison. This recovery program is expensive.
Do you mind?
You just need to look around the living quarters to see that.
Are you good on the guitar?
George McBride, from a UK think tank, wants to know if it's worth it. Norway justifies the expense with the belief it's not about being soft, but about being pragmatic. Behind me is what's regarded as the world's most humane maximum security prison. Not a single coil of razor wire in sight, and yet no prisoner has ever tried to escape. Violent incidents are extremely rare. The prison's ethos is simple. Everyone inside will one day be outside and will become somebody else's neighbour. In the maximum security exercise yard, there's a 20-foot Banksy-style image. It's a constant reminder not of breaking bad, but breaking free. Tors Maybe is on his 3rd stretch at Halden to try to break the habit. The former school teacher is 39 and has lived with drugs since the age of 11. It's not easy to give up the life of a dealer which earned him £2,000 a day.
Sometimes it works and sometimes you came out and have a bad day and use drugs again. Like me, is losing my family. My fiance and kid moves away and I start using drugs again. And it was a short way, so I came here again.
How many children do you have?
I get 4.
4 children?
4 children, 4 different moms, so...
And do they know that you're in here?
Just 3 of them. One of them not.
There are no angels at Halden. Most are hardened criminals. But there's no violence.
I don't know how to be in a normal society without any drugs, without how to react, how to behave or otherwise.
Prison officers are contracted to motivate the inmate, to play the role of mentor and confidant. The prison's by no means drug-free, but there's no economy in illegal substances. So a research team has come over from the UK to learn how to fix the drug-ravaged, violent jails back home.
I do drugs, but not that much. Right. Sometimes. Any drugs or just particular? Cocaine, I like. Cocaine? Yeah. Well, you can't get that here. Yeah, if you want. Can you? Yeah. You think so? Yeah. But you have to order it if you want it.
Gosh. No one is saying Halden's perfect. The picture postcard setting inside the walls
is all part of the rehabilitation theme. You can climb the trees, but you won't get far. The wall and cameras are everywhere. Spending in Holden runs to £76,000 per prisoner per year. That's twice the average in the UK.
When we talk on high security level, you probably save some money for society. If that person don't leave the prison, steals a car, commits a crime, police investigations, time in courts, stuff like that. It's impossible to tally up that amount. I can't say how much it is, but it is an amount. And it's also a saving for society.
Reoffending rates in Norway are at 21%. The UK's average is closer to 55%. But Holden can afford 1 prisoner per cell and 1 officer per prisoner. It's a picture no prison in the UK could even imagine being able to pay for.
It's a society who's chosen to invest the resources in mental health care and helping people get back into society.
Above the fjords sits a former German World War II army barracks. It's now a women's prison and hosts a number of vulnerable victims of domestic and drug abuse. It works on trust. There are no locked doors within the prison, and there's a roll call 4 times a day. Only 1 inmate has ever tried to escape. The drug recovery programs go on inside this chalet. It's the final session for this former school teacher and the prison therapist.
We've spoken about motherhood, what it's like to be a mother, what it's like to be ashamed. We've spoken a lot about shame and guilt, those really, really hard, horrible feelings.
How does it feel to leave, to be leaving?
Well, to be leaving this place is very sad. I'm going to cry because of all the people that work here, but also the women that I'm here with. We're almost like sisters, so that's very strange.
Back at Holden, the prospect of release for any of them is not imminent. But Tor Smeby can at least look forward to a reunion.
Are you nervous?
Yes, I'm very nervous. It's like lots of joy, but I'm very nervous. I have to answer some questions, so...
What will you tell her about being in here?
I have to tell the truth and tell her what I've done and be honest. I think that's the best thing to do.
Do the inmates of Holden's C8 unit offer any solutions to Britain's prisons crisis, where treatment services have been cut by 40% and drugs are a well-established commodity inside? It's difficult to measure this prison's effectiveness, but at least it knows what it's trying to achieve.
Simon Israel reporting from Norway. After the break, from the director of the classic Boys in the Hood, thoughts on black opportunity in America, on racial tensions, on that presidential election.
Welcome back. Now, the Californian director John Singleton was just 24 when he was nominated for Best Director at the Oscars for his seminal movie about growing up in South Central LA, Boys in the Hood. 25 years on, it's being re-released. I met him earlier and asked how he thinks things have changed for African-American men since his film was released.
Thinking in terms of where African-American men are right now, in terms of the prison industrial complex, in terms of the proliferation of gun violence. I'm wondering, I think those statistics are really skewed even further now.
Isn't that a massive, shocking failure by America in 25 years?
Well, I mean, it's a systemic problem. It's a systemic problem. I think I liken it to a psychological problem, that a generation, multiple generations of people are growing up in a kind of nihilistic environment, where they don't feel like, they don't feel any kind of self-worth towards themselves or each other. Black Americans have always been at a siege with American society. I mean, ever since, we were taken as over from Africa. I think that the important thing about Black Lives Matter is that it is a youth movement, and that it has a chance to actually change the psychology of the youth. And that's something that hasn't been done since the 60s, where people were calling each other, you know, hey my brother, hey my sister. There was much more of a love of Black people amongst themselves, and that's really primarily, as a storyteller, what I'm concerned with. That's what Boys in the Hood is concerned with. Boys in the Hood isn't one of those films that talks about, oh, you know, the white people did this to us and da 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 da. It's more like, okay, what are we going to do collectively to come together and for our own betterment?
Either they don't know, don't show, or don't care about what's going on in the hood.
There's anger too, isn't there, with the establishment? I mean, there's the line in there about how there's no place for a black man in the American military.
Yes.
For example. And I wonder whether you still feel like that about the institutions of America. You know, that in a way America's moved on so many times, and you've got a black president and all of that. But
but that's just symbolic. All those things are very symbolic. I mean, I feel that here's a conundrum, because America was founded on the blood, sweat, and tears of African peoples, of Black peoples. And so, you know, that's how I felt at 22 years old. You know, I was like, you know, just really want to make a statement like, hey, you know, this whole thing is messed up. The whole system is messed up, which it is, you know, but reflecting on myself now, I feel that the country is ours. And not just because now for the next 2 weeks we have a black president. It's because historically, everything that is unique about America comes from Black people. The music, the culture, the infrastructure. There are so many different things that were built in our capital were built on the backs of slaves. So for me to say that, you know, there's no place for us there, I wouldn't say that.
Can I just ask you how you feel about the election? I mean, what difference do you think either of these candidates will make to those sorts of communities that you come from? Well,
I mean, honestly speaking, I think Hillary Clinton will make much more of an impact than Donald Trump. I mean, it's almost as if you're watching it's a Bugs Bunny cartoon. You had like the angel pop up on the shoulder, and then you had the devil pop up on the shoulder. So it's like, you know.
Is it that stark?
It's
an angel and devil.
The devil change. I mean, like, whatever you want to say about Hillary Clinton and her political life and everything, she's been a politician most of her life. You know what I mean? Like, and this other guy, he's just ranting and raving.
I mean, you talked about nihilism.
Yes.
In the community you came from. I mean, I wonder if that nihilism has spread across America now, and that's why Trump is doing well in some places.
No, I think Trump is doing well in a lot of places because, honestly speaking, George Bush did such a bad job in the country that they do whatever they do, you know, when something is really bad, you know, like around the home, around the business, everything. They ran to the black man. Then they woke up and said, oh my God, we put a black man in the highest office in the world. And so now when they exhort themselves for Trump, it's all about the catharsis of that. And the irony is that when Hillary Clinton becomes president, which she is, I feel that she's going to go through the other side of what Barack Obama. You'll have the misogyny and the sexist, because there are people who are not willing to accept a woman can do that office. But she's much more equipped to do it. Much more equipped to do it.
John Singleton, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
And Boys in the Hood is back on release from tomorrow.
That's all we have time for. We're back tomorrow, same time. But that's Channel 4 News. Good evening.
Bye-bye.